Hi, I'm Chuck Myron,
And I'm his wife, Taryn Myron.
and we're married to Saturdays.
Married to Saturdays. Welcome back again.
All right. Well, a couple of big things happened just very recently, and so we were going to release a podcast, but then those things happened, and we wanted to get on top of those. So you'll see today kind of a two-part podcast, shall we say?
Yes.
So we'll transition to the second part in a little bit, and we'll talk about what we learned from 2025. But first, I want to talk about, well, first of all, Joey Aguilar's court case.
Yes.
And it sounds like he might be coming back, or maybe even likely to be coming back to Tennessee next season, which could change some things.
That's exciting. Tell us more about this court case.
Well, so originally he was also a co plaintiff in the case with Diego Pavia.
Your favorite quarterback.
Yeah, and so that he split his case off. And he was able to find a sympathetic judge in Knoxville,
Yes.
actually, who ruled, I should say, gave a temporary injunction.
Yes.
In his favor, and indicated that he's likely to ultimately win the case against the NCAA for him to be able to have another year of eligibility. Now, that's not finalized, so we don't know for sure, but it certainly throws a lot of things into flux in terms of, okay, so if Joey Aguilar comes back and is Tennessee's quarterback next year, as we would presume he would be, then what happens to George McIntyre and what happens to Faison Brandon? Both highly touted recruits. One, of course, McIntyre sat most of the year last year. Jake Merklinger is already
he's already gone.
Yeah, he's already gone and transferred out. So McIntyre, you have him with 1 year on the bench, and then Brandon coming as a true freshman. And so the thinking was, well, one of those two guys would win the job. They also got, they got a transfer from Colorado, the backup there,
correct,
to be in that mix. But now, if Aguilar is coming back, he would be the presumed starter.
Yes, I don't think it would be much of a competition or much of a decision for the Tennessee coaching staff.
And if you are, it's one thing if you're Faison Brandon and you're coming in now. Certainly, you would have liked to have had an opportunity to win the starting job as a true freshman, but you might understand that as a true freshman that might not work out.
Exactly.
So you're probably not as disappointed as George McIntyre, who already sat a year behind Aguilar. Now, a second year on the clock. Of course, we've already had the transfer portal this year.
Right, so, the window is closed
now. So this makes an interesting scenario for him, and you wonder, well, could he maybe take some legal route then? Because it seems like everyone is going to the courts against the NCAA because
that's right.
The courts tend to rule against the NCAA, and that is a larger question about whether the NCAA is going to exist for much longer. Hard to say, but it doesn't look good long term.
And that's a whole other discussion.
That is, it gets really interesting because the more any quarterback is going to be told to sit, the more likely it is that he's going to transfer.
Yes.
So I think while in the short term, this would be a good thing for Tennessee to have Aguilar back next year. Certainly a very nearly a record-setting number of yards for passing for him. I am not certain that long-term that's the best thing because, again, even Faison Brandon could look at that and say, now, wait a second. I'm a five-star incoming recruit.
Right.
I really wanted to have a chance to compete for that certain job, and maybe he'll still get that. If one of the things that Coach Heupel signaled even before this was in his pursuit of some of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal, Sam Levitt among them.
Sure.
That he seemed to have a desire for a veteran starting quarterback to come in.
Of course.
He didn't seem to give full trust to Brandon and McIntyre. So I really wonder what that means for both of those quarterbacks long term. If Heupel isn't willing to commit to them now, will he ever be willing to commit to them?
That's a great question.
So it's a really interesting inflection point. Obviously, we like I said again, we don't know for sure that Aguilar is coming back.
We hope so.
But well, again, short term, yes, it certainly improves Tennessee's outlook for 2026.
Sure.
But how does it leave Tennessee for 2027 and beyond?
Right.
That I think is a bigger question. So, but I know Florida State also has some news that will affect at least 2026.
Yeah, so I'm sure many of you have already heard, but Gus Malzahn has decided to retire. This was less than a week ago that he announced his retirement from football after 35 total years in the coaching sphere. We know that it's not a great time for this to happen, of course. It's February. Everyone's asking why he didn't announce this a couple of months ago. It would have been more logical, I think. But, he did interview for a couple of head coaching jobs. He interviewed for Arkansas. I believe he interviewed for UAB, possibly. And, of course, as we know, both of those schools went another direction with their head coach search. So it's really interesting to me. I've kind of heard some rumblings. It may have been health related or family, some kind of personal issue. And if it's that, of course we understand. And, we just want to take this time in our podcast to wish Coach Malzahn all the best in his retirement and to thank him for, the year that he put in at Florida State. Now that's the positive. Also, Tim Harris, who is the wide receivers coach, notably was promoted to co-offensive coordinator a couple months ago. Now he's going to be sole offensive coordinator. But here's the interesting wrinkle. Mike Norvell is going to call the plays again. So I'm kind of feeling like positive and negative about it. So my negative spin is this is complete trash and this will guarantee that Mike Norvell loses his job in 2026. That's my negative side. Let's just put it blunt.
It may ultimately be a good thing long term. Again, going beyond 2026.
Exactly. But if you try to look at this from the positive, he did call the plays in 2022 and 2023, which were his best seasons at Florida State. So, maybe there's some hope there.
Well, what did you think of his ability as a play caller? Do you think that do you think he's better or worse than Malzahn? I think that's the question.
I think he's probably better than Malzahn. We know that he called the plays at Memphis, Mike Norvell did, and he obviously did a great job there. And I think looking even farther back to like 2024, where everything that could go wrong did on both sides of the ball. So I think we have a better, class of players. We have a better roster. We have better coaches, better assistant coaches. We have a good offensive line coach and Herb Hand. And, like I said, we've got Tim Harris, who was just promoted to offensive coordinator. So I think we have better talent this year coming into 2026. So maybe not the talent we had in 2022 or 2023, of course, with Jordan Travis. But, we have some really great quarterbacks coming in through the transfer portal. It's going to be a great competition between, Ashton Daniels and Malachi Marshall, I believe, and Kevin Sperry, who was the backup last year. So I think it's going to be a really interesting season. Something else that I've thought of, when they promoted offensive coordinator Tim Harris is, like I said, why didn't Gus Malzahn announce this in December? It was when everybody was hiring head coaches and new coordinators. This move really puts Florida State behind as far as recruiting and, just player development. I think it might have hurt us a little bit in the transfer portal because guys that came into the transfer portal, obviously for the offense, had some kind of recruitment from Malzahn, and they thought they were going to play for him, and now they're not. So this will be a little interesting add to, I think, the team dynamic.
So, in a vacuum,
Yes.
when a coach takes on the play calling duties, it puts more pressure on them because
Exactly.
they have more responsibility,
Yes.
and ultimately, if something goes wrong, they have more responsibility to answer for it. But in this case, I think the seat is so hot
Yes.
under Mike Norvell that I don't think this makes a whole lot of difference.
I agree.
I think he, would have a lot to answer for no matter what. So in this regard, I think Mike Norvell might feel maybe a sense of relief that he has more within his sphere of control.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever happens,
Right.
his fate is more in his hands than it had been when Gus was there.
Right.
But look, I think everything is on the line for Mike Norvell this season, and he's got to put the team in the postseason, not necessarily the playoff, but he's got to
at least get to a bowl.
Get you to a bowl. Yeah, you have to have. I would think I would think 7-5 is the floor. I don't think an incremental improvement is going to save Norvell's job.
I agree with you, and I think and we'll talk about this more as the off season goes on. But Florida State's got a really tough schedule this year. They've got several Friday night games. They've of course still got Alabama on their schedule. Now the Miami game looks a lot tougher. They've got Florida and Clemson. So it's going to be a tough schedule this year. So again, like you said, we're going to start the season with Mike Norvell's seat like on fire. So we'll see if he could cool that down at all, or maybe he won't survive the season. And I think a lot of us would be okay with that in the Florida State fan base.
I don't think, at least I would hope that the schedule strength would not be an excuse that that Florida State would use to tolerate another mediocre season.
Right. I mean, if you look at Florida the past couple seasons under Billy Napier, they had a very difficult schedule. And, he obviously didn't survive that. And I'm not sure that Norvell can survive this schedule.
Well, and that's something that every SEC team, including Tennessee, is going to be dealing with this year too. Is a 9-game conference schedule,
correct,
increased schedule strength, and that means more losses for for half the teams in the SEC,
right,
and that's going to increase the pressure, I think, on a lot of people, and certainly I think if those losses start to pile up, Josh Heupel would not be immune to that.
I agree.
Especially with the way this past season ended.
Yes.
So, but that might be one more reason why he was so keen on going after some of those top transfer quarterbacks, and why we might see Joey Aguilar back, at quarterback for Tennessee as somebody who is a known and proven commodity.
Correct.
Something that the Vols, by the way, have not had for the majority of Heupel's tenure. There's been a lot of turnover at that position.
Exactly.
Either planned or unplanned, and so I think it'd be really interesting to see how Tennessee's able to perform when that's the case. So and certainly with Hendon Hooker coming in in 22, knowing that he was going to be the guy that year, panned out pretty well.
Yes.
So we'll see. There's lots to talk about, and a little bit more to talk about with regard to how what we learned in 2025 is going to reflect in the year to come. But we're going to talk about that in the second part of this podcast. So there's going to be a little transition. You'll see, you'll see our get-ups change because it's an earlier recording.
That's right.
We'll transition right into that right now.
Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're waiting on that transition. Just hit the button.
Well, they can do that at the end of the video. Easier for them. But we'll transition. We'll see you in a second. Hi, I'm Chuck Myron.
And I'm his wife, Taryn Myron.
And we're Married to Saturdays.
Married to Saturdays. Welcome back.
Well, the season, the 2025 season is in the books. And
sadly,
Indiana is the champion. And, it was an interesting year with a lot to take away from this year, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, we would have much preferred for the national champion to be Tennessee or Florida State, but that didn't happen. It wasn't even close for either team.
Didn't think it was going to happen really either. Of course, who would have thought it would have been Indiana
Not me, that's for sure.
I think, that's what a story, right?
Yes.
2 years ago they were 3-9, and now they're sitting on top of college football, which I think is what makes the sport interesting at its core, is that something like this can happen.
Absolutely.
Well, since our first podcast at the beginning of the season was a back to school theme,
yes.
I thought it might be appropriate now that we're at the end of the season to talk about what we learned from the 2025 college football season. So, I guess from Tennessee's standpoint, I think we learned a few things. One is we need a reliable kicker.
Yes.
Who can come through in the clutch.
Yes.
And Max Gilbert was, for most of the year, actually, statistically, a very reliable kicker. Just did make the kicks that counted the most.
Right.
Which is what you need in college football.
Exactly.
Or in football in general. So, that was difficult, but really, I think that the two biggest takeaways that I have from this Tennessee season are, number one, Josh Heupel is skilled enough as a coach to take just about any set of offensive players, and in particular any quarterback, because Joey Aguilar, for everything that he does bring to the table, at the beginning of the year was really just about any quarterback.
Yes.
An Appalachian State transfer was about to go to UCLA, and of course did the switcheroo with Nico. But there was no expectation of competent quarterback play going into the year. Of course, Aguilar had to fight to win the job. He was really expected to, but he did have to beat out both freshman Jake Merklinger, the redshirt freshman, and George McIntyre, the true freshman, was able to do so, and of course was able to put up near school record numbers. Of course, went into the bowl game with a chance to pass it to Peyton Manning. So I think you have to, and obviously Heupel has had years like Nico in 2024,
yes,
and with Milton, where the offense hasn't hummed. But Aguilar was able to come in and make it look like Hendon Hooker's offense in 22. And remember, Hooker was not a highly sought after transfer either when he came from Virginia Tech. So Heupel's ability to rebuild just about any quarterback is unmatched.
Yes.
I think, though, on the flip side, we knew that we needed to make changes defensively. The offense is something that Heupel can take, and even when the quarterback isn't super strong, as with Nico in 2024, he was able to turn that offense into a run-oriented offense with Dylan Sampson, and made him the SEC's leading rusher that year. So Heupel's going to make it work offensively.
Yeah, he's an offensive guy.
yeah, and like not just an offensive guy, an elite level offensive coach.
Yes,
who's proven that he can win big games with his offense. 52-49 over Alabama in 2022, and beating again Alabama in 24 with that run-oriented offense. But okay, so 2024 Tennessee had an elite defense. That hasn't been the case otherwise during Josh Heupel's tenure.
Correct.
And this year, the defense crashed and burned hard, especially against the run. But as the season went on, it just got worse.
It did get worse,
The tackling, the fundamentals weren't there. And ultimately, a change had to be made.
Right.
And that's the other takeaway from Tennessee's season is something had to change defensively. And again, credit to Heupel. He was able to go out and get Jim Knowles, a proven winner and a successful defensive coordinator from Penn State.
Correct.
And of course, he was with Ohio State in 2024.
Right.
So I think, look, time will tell whether he's going to be successful at Tennessee. But now we have that chance to succeed that I don't think we had or would have had if we had kept Tim Banks as defensive coordinator. So, I think the biggest takeaway from those two takeaways is that Josh Heupel is still the right guy for Tennessee.
I
for
agree.
all of the criticism
Mhm.
that he faced, rightly or wrongly, throughout the season for some, game management
Mhm.
issues.
Sure.
Obviously, for the way the defense performed, even though he took care of that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I think as long as he's there right now, you have to feel confident about Tennessee's chances, because in addition to those things, right? They have the number 7 recruiting class
Mhm.
coming
Mhm.
in, number 21 transfer class
Yes.
coming in.
Yes.
Did a great job with Knowles bringing in
Mhm.
defensive guys from Penn
Right.
State.
Right.
It took a lot of Penn State's defense from last year.
Yes.
And remember, Penn State played Indiana to
Mhm.
about as close as anybody did all year.
Almost. Yeah.
They were a
Exactly.
toe in the end zone
Yes.
away from winning that game.
Exactly.
So I think that you have to be optimistic coming off of 2025, because the biggest weakness on the team is exactly what has been addressed.
Right, and that's the defense.
Exactly.
And I think because Jim Knowles is bringing in some of those guys from Penn State, he'll already have some defensive players that know his scheme, know his ways, and I think hopefully with the rest of the Tennessee defense, they can make it a really strong defense next year.
Right, and look, the proof is always on the field. We saw that with Indiana. They had a bunch of 3-star guys,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So we'll talk about that a little bit, but I think I think Tennessee is in a position where now, they've taken care of business in terms of getting the right personnel, whether it's coaching or players, in place, and now they got to perform.
Exactly. So I agree with you. I definitely think Josh Heupel is the right guy for Tennessee. Still is.
Yes. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about Florida State.
Oh boy.
What did we learn from Florida State's 2025?
2025 was a really interesting season for Florida State. After that disastrous season in 2024, going 2-10, Mike Norvell realized he needed new coordinators on both sides of the ball. So, he came in and he got, his friend Gus Malzahn from UCF, who was at Auburn, and, lots of other places as well, because Mike Norvell and Malzahn have a very long existing relationship. So, brought Malzahn in as his offensive coordinator. He brought in Tony White from Nebraska as his defensive coordinator. So, because we had a new coaching staff and we had a new quarterback and Tommy Castellanos, who transferred from Boston College, there were a lot of high expectations for this year. And at first, we thought those expectations were going to be high. What a great win over Alabama, week 1. I even go back to where Tommy Castellanos was trash talking and, in the preseason, and I was like, oh, don't do that, because, he kept saying Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban to save them anymore. And but we went out and, Florida State proved in that first week that they were a team to be reckoned with. And everyone was excited. Yours truly, especially. Was shocked that we even beat Alabama. I just expected it to be a close game. I remember even saying that, I think, in our first podcast of the season. So it went really well for 3 weeks. And then week 4, starting with that Virginia game on that Friday night, where poor Squirrel White almost got, I don't know, he definitely got trampled. And we were really worried about him for the rest of the evening if he was okay. But the season just went downhill after that. I'm kind of surprised we even squeaked out 5 wins. I'm surprised they didn't fire Mike Norvell, not only this entire season, but I'm surprised Florida State administration did not fire him after the Stanford game.
Well, let me ask you this. Is one of the lessons that we learned from this Florida State season that Mike Norvell is not the right coach?
Oh, absolutely. I think he's a good person, and he is probably a good coach, but I don't know that Florida State is the right fit for him. For me, he had the great seasons in 2022 and 23. We had Jordan Travis. We had, great people on the defense who were doing wonderful things in the NFL, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk. So I think he's got the ability to be a good coach, but I don't know that Florida State is the right fit for him. I think maybe he should, maybe think about going back to a smaller school.
So you don't think he can win on this level?
Consistently, no.
Okay. Any other takeaways from this year?
I think we have some potential in the future, but really, we definitely improved from 2024. So if you want to look at something positive, that's the improvements. I mean, going from 2-10 to 5-7, still not great, still not bowl eligible. But there was a slight improvement. And honestly, after Tommy Castellanos, after he, hurt his ankle, he was really limited the rest of the season. And I think that's also when, everything changed for Florida State because he got hurt in that Virginia game.
Well, yeah, injuries, always that X factor.
Exactly.
And I think I, that as you look forward, I mean, is there anything that you can take from this season about that says, okay, how are you going to be successful in 2026 and beyond?
That's a great question. I mean, we have some new quarterbacks coming in for 2026. If you want me to talk about that,
sure.
So, Brock Glenn transferred, Tommy Castellanos is gone. So we've got, a quarterback battle for the first time in really many years. In 2024, we had DJU. That was not a quarterback competition. We know how that worked out. 2025, we had Tommy Castellanos, obviously not a quarterback competition between him and Sperry and Glenn. But this year, we're going to have a quarterback competition for the first time in a long time. I mean, if you even go way back, really not a major quarterback competition since Jimbo Fisher was the head coach, where you had Drew Weatherford and Xavier Lee competing for the starting quarterback job, or, go a little bit farther when it was Jameis Winston competing for the starting quarterback job with Clint Trickett, who, when Jameis Winston got the job, and we all know what happened to Jameis Winston, that history speaks for itself, but Clint Trickett transferred as soon as he realized he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback at Florida State. And really, the only kind of quasi quarterback competition I want to say we've had really since the Mike Norvell era started is really just between Jordan Travis and Mackenzie Milton, who was brought in from UCF. And of course, we know what happened with Jordan Travis, and he is, he was just wonderful. And of course, we miss him every day in Florida State football. But this year, we have a quarterback competition between three really exciting prospects. We've got Ashton Daniels from Auburn, who I'm not super wild about right now, but let's see how he does. He has seen some action, in Power 4 games, so that's a plus. We have the JUCO transfer, Malachi Marshall, who I think is low key a big addition for Florida State. He was JUCO Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, so he's got the numbers, he's got the stats. Of course, he's not going to be playing JUCO teams. He's going to be playing Power 4 teams. He's going to be playing Miami, and Clemson and Alabama and Florida and all these like big name teams with big name players with a lot more talent. And then we've also got Kevin Sperry. So we can't forget about him. So he's got the experience as far as he's been on Norvell's and Gus Malzahn's offense for a year now. And it was interesting because, when we had to put in a backup quarterback in a Stanford game, they didn't put in Brock Glenn, who had more experience. They put in Kevin Sperry, the freshman. So I think it's going to be a great quarterback competition. And this is the first real quarterback competition we've seen in the Mike Norvell era.
I want to go back to what you said about the JUCO transfer.
Okay.
Because that, you talk about the stats and the numbers, and yeah, it's a different level, obviously. But one thing that Curt Cignetti, who's the gold standard, I think, right now, talked about for his transfers was, hey, I like to get guys and his high school recruits as well who put up numbers.
Right.
Wherever they are, they're being productive. That productivity is something that he believes will transfer
exactly
in given the right coaching. So I think that's interesting to hear you say that in the context of what we've just seen be really successful on the highest level.
Right. And I also think Florida State might be looking for the next Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, remember what a great job he did with Mississippi this year. Got him so close to that national championship game.
Yeah. That's a very interesting story, coming from Ferris State, as he did. So let's talk a little bit more broadly about this past season and what we learned from all of college football.
Yes.
And well, I just was talking about Cignetti, so I think one of the lessons that we learned is that for all of the hue and cry about Lane Kiffin, Curt Cignetti is still the gold standard.
Absolutely.
He has shown a model that is quite different, I think, from Kiffin's model of, look, let's go get high profile recruits.
Right.
Let's win with them. LSU, they have 3 5-stars in the transfer portal. I don't think anyone else has more than one.
Right.
So you see that star system. Whereas with Curt Cignetti, it's about, he has 3 stars.
Yes. But he won a national championship with them.
and it's about identifying people who are under the radar.
Right.
So not worrying about trying to recruit the biggest and flashiest, but going and getting guys who are going to fit your system and who you think are going to be successful, who have tools that may be overlooked by other schools. So going and specifically identifying what you think a winning player, what traits he has, and then also coaching them once they get there.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting because, look, we all saw how successful Mississippi was after Lane Kiffin
Exactly. They still did an amazing job.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting going forward to see how many schools will try to copy that Lane Kiffin model, go out and get the coach who's going to, get the 5 stars, or who's going to copy the model of another Saban disciple, of Curt Cignetti, which is, hey, let's win in the margins because we can make hay there.
Exactly. And when you talk about Saban disciples, also want to talk about Mario Cristobal. He's kind of had the similar, I think, method of Lane Kiffin. I mean, he goes out and gets the big names. He got Carson Beck last year. Big name from Georgia. It's done a lot. This year he's, I think they're getting quarterback Darian Mensah from Duke. So big names.
Well, and I think that's the popular way of going about it because it's always easier to win. If you have talent, right?
Of course.
That makes the job
a little easier at least.
but you've then got to manage that talent,
exactly.
And you've got to have guys who have winning habits. Everybody who is coming into college football has had some kind of success in high school,
of course,
or wherever they've been.
They wouldn't be playing in college if they didn't have that success.
But then how does that translate into college football and high-level college football? So I think we have Cignetti, I think, has shown a new way.
Yes.
This is a copycat industry. We all see it on television. It's spectator sport, so there are no secrets.
Yes.
And I'm going to be really intrigued to see how many schools and coaches try to copy what Curt Cignetti has done.
And Curt Cignetti, I mean, what an amazing job. I know we keep talking about it, but what an incredible story, incredible job he's done at Indiana this past few years.
I think we're not talking about it enough. Broadly in college football. Again, for all of the talk that we dedicated to Lane Kiffin and all that drama. He wins. Google him, Curt Cignetti. So I think a quiet winning, it beats loud recruiting and hubbub every time.
I mean, as a Tennessee fan, we know how all you Tennessee fans feel about Lane Kiffin.
Well, there's no secrets there either.
Exactly.
Okay, so another thing that I'm taking away from this, another lesson learned from this college football season, is that the SEC must change its approach in order to get back on top of college football.
Absolutely. And, Big Ten, they've won the last 3 national championships. Michigan, Ohio State, Indiana.
And the SEC has not been in any of those 3 championship games.
No, they haven't. So
this is, I think, for a conference that prides itself on being the best, I think it's a declaration that right now the SEC is not the best. And in order to become the best conference again, something has to change.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's, looking at copying what Cignetti has done, being, less about, okay, LSU go out and get a Lane Kiffin.
Yes.
Maybe more about what Pete Golding at Ole Miss was able to do. How was he able to rally those players
Exactly.
and get the most out of them in the biggest games in the playoffs? And even in losing, I mean, you saw Trinidad Chambliss in that offense really perform to a wonderful degree.
Exactly. Yes.
And I look at what, of course, I look at what Heupel is doing. I see it through the Prism of Tennessee. And I go back to that playoff game in 24 up at Ohio State. There was a certain I think overconfidence.
Yes, I agree.
That Tennessee had going into that, because I think everyone expected Ohio State to just lay down after Michigan, and that there was no way.
Right, and that of course didn't happen.
No, and so I think that's something that when we think about the SEC, this is a conference with its right from the top, from Greg Sankey, with hubris. This is a conference that prides itself again on being the best, and now I think there's got to be maybe a little bit of humility, and also a little bit of let's concentrate again on attitude and winning approach. And I go back again to Tennessee, what happened in the off season after that defeat at Ohio State. Nico goes and asks for $4 million, and
it's not worth it,
and leaves the team, on the eve of the spring game, and Heupel just says, look, we're not going to have it.
Exactly.
That nobody is bigger than the power T.
That's right.
And you have to have that focus. You have to have that ability to cut ties with somebody who you invested a lot in, if they're not going to get with the program, if they're not going to support you, and are simply out for themselves as opposed to the team.
Right. Well, as a fan of a team who's not in the SEC, I think I can look at it, more from the outside looking in. And I think that the SEC has so many good teams that you're just beating up on each other. And that's what I think part of the problem is. But you're right. I think the SEC is also looking for that Cignetti, for that quiet coach. And you may not like this, but as a Tennessee fan, but I think the next quiet coach in the SEC could very well be Alex Galesh, the new coach at Auburn. Not a lot of people know how well he did at USF. He is a Heupel disciple, but maybe just kind of watch for that.
Well, look, Curt Cignetti has a certain arrogance to him too.
Oh, of course, yes.
So it's not, there's a difference between hubris and arrogance and overconfidence.
Yes.
And so you can trash talk all you want if you back it up.
Exactly.
Florida State,
like Tommy Castellanos did. Yes.
A great example there.
Yes.
And so maybe part of this might be, look, 3 years ago, before this run by the Big Ten in the championships, Kirby Smart seemed every bit the successor to Nick Saban as the king of college football, right?
Yes.
And it hasn't quite panned out that way.
Not the last few years. No.
Georgia hasn't taken, certainly you don't look at that program and say taking a giant step back, but it has not become that Alabama level gold standard of college football the way I think a lot of us thought that Georgia would.
Right.
And so I think we're seeing life after Saban in the conference.
Yes.
But to your point, I do think there is a lot of parity in the SEC right now that we didn't see during the reign of Alabama, and then Alabama and Georgia.
Right. And you got to think, because Georgia, before the 2023 season, you always saw pretty much either Georgia or Alabama or both in the national title game. Not that Georgia's done bad, but they didn't make the playoffs in 2023, which of course I know very well. But they've been in the playoffs the last 2 years. They just haven't gotten to that game.
Yeah. And that's all about getting to that game.
Yes.
That's
exactly.
why you lace them up. So
that's right.
But I think something has to change for the SEC, because I think it's not working right now. You 3 times its trend. So whether it's just in the way they hire coaches, the way they recruit, the schedule. I think, look, 9 games, 9 conference games
It's
this year
lot, yeah.
will be a very interesting wrinkle because we had 5 SEC teams in the playoff this past year.
Correct. And none of them reached the title game.
None of them reached the title game.
One reached the semis.
Only one got to the semifinals. I would be very surprised if we got 5 SEC teams come into the playoffs next year,
right,
because of the extra games and extra losses that the SEC will just pick up because of the math of 9 versus 8.
Right. Now, does the Big Ten play 8 conference games or 9 conference games?
Okay. They've been playing 9 for a while.
Okay.
They were at the vanguard of that. So,
okay.
And that was a complaint of the Big Ten, that they wouldn't go along, with expanding the playoff until the SEC went with that 9-game schedule. And that kind of dovetails into my other takeaway from this season, my other lesson learned, which is that the 12-team model of the playoff is inherently flawed. Yes. And that the leaders of the sport are unwise or foolish to have it persist. Exactly. I think the 12-team playoff would work better if there wasn't such a length of time between the rounds, especially for those top 4 seeds. And I think in order to change that, you'd have to change the format in a way that, right now, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, they can't agree. Right. They can't see eye to eye. They're making, some of them are making, they're making concessions and promise and sometimes promises that they're not keeping to TV networks. And that, which is part of the reason, Kevin Warren, the old Big Ten commissioner, correct, reportedly said to CBS and NBC, "Hey, we will get you, play-in games on championship weekends. We'll get you auto bids into the playoff," and that's why the Big Ten has been trying to make good and expand this field to 24, so that they can guarantee that, say, the third best team in the Big Ten versus the 6th best team in the Big Ten, you play them off, one of them gets an auto bid, that kind of thing. Right. I just think, look, you can't be trying to pay off old debts if you want to move into the future of college football. Exactly. And right now, this 12-team model, with that long gap between the time that you finish your regular season and then play that quarterfinal. Yes. If you're not playing in the first round, you're at a disadvantage. Those teams that have the bye are 1-7. It's no secret that's a disadvantage. And I mentioned it before, but I think right now, going into the 2026 season, we're at a serious risk of a team sitting its starters to in order
maybe in that conference championship
conference championship game, which I know the conference commissioners care a heck of a lot about.
Yes, they do.
It's a huge moneymaker. But imagine if we get to the conference championship game and, say, Georgia sits their starters because Kirby Smart is smart enough to realize, hey, we don't want that bye. Right. We think we're going to get in the playoffs. But we'll take a 5 through 8 seed any day of the week, because guess what? That's also a game at home. Exactly. That's a game at home. Now, if I can get that, I'd much rather do that than have to wait a week. And now I'm playing a
couple
team
of weeks.
Wait an extra week or more. Actually, that's right. Because of the way it's structured, and then play on New Year's Day against a team with momentum.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Yes. Coming off a big win. And now you got to play them, and you're not ready. You're not ready. And I know this is a college football podcast, and we don't really talk about the NFL, but I will say they need to follow the NFL format for the teams that get the bye. 1 week. 1 week. That's it. That's again, it's completely unnatural. You're going through the season. You play every week. You obviously you get a bye week or 2 during the season. Sure. But you don't get a month off. No. And then come back and play. And that's the biggest problem, I think, with the playoff format, whether it's 12, 14, 16 teams, whichever format that we're going to go with. You should be like the NFL. You finish your season, conference championship. Sorry, Army-Navy, but the first round should start the week of the Army-Navy game. Well, I think that, and there's a way to get Army-Navy in an exclusive window. There's plenty of opportunities to do that. Right. I think ultimately you have to acknowledge that the buys don't work.
Right.
And if you have a 16-team field, you don't have to have buys.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's a good way to get rid of that problem.
Yes.
And disadvantaging certain teams. Because now you've got, you make it simple.
1 versus 16 and so on.
And so, and from the SEC standpoint, from Greg Sankey's standpoint, look, the Big Ten is pushing 24. They want 24 really bad, probably to pay off those old debts
exactly.
to the networks. Well, in 24, you got to have a bye. The next number to get to no buys is 32.
Right.
And I would hope we would all agree on the idea that 32 teams is just way too many.
Might be a bit much. Yeah, exactly.
Way too many.
Yeah.
So okay. I think Greg Sankey has done the right thing by holding a hard line, even though I think it will hurt the SEC in the upcoming season because of that 9-game schedule. Now there will be fewer SEC teams likely to get in the playoff, because some of those 2-loss teams will have 3 losses. Alabama maybe.
Why an Alabama, a 3-loss Alabama team got in, I still don't know.
Well, but some of the like in Oklahoma perhaps, or
right, a Texas maybe.
Right. Well, they did have 3 losses.
Well,
so
that's true.
Think about if Oklahoma had an extra loss there because they had to play an extra conference game, then you lose a team more than likely out of the playoffs. If Alabama had an extra loss, then they would have 3 losses without getting to the conference championship game. So maybe they're out.
Right.
So I think it was a move designed really for the long run, not just this year, but for next year as well. Because I think or for not just this coming year, but for years down the road.
Right.
I think ultimately we're going to see that we're going to see more and more examples of the 12-team field not being the appropriate number.
Right.
And I think Sankey knows that, and I think the more evidence that we gather, the more he's going to be able to put pressure on Petitti and the Big Ten and be able to say, look, 16's the number. You got to come to the table and you got to agree to that.
But now I wonder if the Big Ten is going to be more like the SEC as far as beating up on each other, because now you have a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. You've got your Ohio State, your Indiana, Michigan, you've got your Penn State, USC, Oregon. Like, all of these are big name teams now. You got your other guys like Iowa and whatnot, kind of creeping in there, who like to disrupt plans. So maybe they'll be like the SEC, beating up on each other next year. So only time will tell.
Well, I think you see some tough schedules for
the Big Ten.
For Big Ten teams. Indiana having to play Michigan and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks.
That's tough.
Next year.
Yes.
That's going to be really tough.
Yes.
And so I think, look, I hope it doesn't take a team not trying its hardest to win a game, for everyone to realize that 16 is the right number, or they're not going back to 8.
No,
but
definitely not.
I think 16 is the right number, and hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I think it might, and I almost think it might have to in order to get the Big Ten to realize that there's just no way that we can have these buys, or at least structure things where you're not sitting for a month.
Exactly. And maybe that's something they can work on in this off season.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to do it right now,
right?
Because they closed the window. But maybe if not for 2026, 2027,
perhaps
work on it for that year.
Perhaps.
So we'll see.
Yes.
All right. Anything else that you take away from this year?
This was a really up and down season for Florida State. Again, high expectations, and then it just kind of tanked after week 4. So hoping for a better season. There was improvement. But the season overall, I thought was really interesting. There were some things that we didn't expect, like Indiana, of course, their run. Penn State's dramatic downfall. They had high expectations. We haven't really talked about it. They had high expectations going into the season, and then they tanked. Kind of same thing that happened with Clemson and LSU. Some of these traditional schools who have been really good the past few years, their seasons just kind of tanked. So it's kind of interesting to see, you know, how that happened this year.
Uneasy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
And I think that's a lesson that we can learn from this season too.
Yes.
Is what goes up must come down.
That's
and,
right.
Yeah. Well, I think part of why we love it, the chaos of college football.
That's right. We love the college football chaos.
Well, with that in mind, we will look forward to more of that.
Yes.
And more. I'm sure we'll have more off-season chaos.
Oh yes.
If history is any guide. So
yes.
Stick with us. Subscribe. That way you'll know.
Hit the subscribe button.
That's right. That's way you'll know when these podcasts are coming, because
Yes.
you don't have the regular weekly schedule like we do during the season.
That's right.
But things to look for. We've got the draft coming up.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit about that.
Very excited about that.
Spring ball as we get closer to that.
Our spring games hopefully will be televised.
And hopefully we'll have spring games. We
Yes.
might talk about the death or the decline of the spring games.
Yes.
as we go along here. But keep subscribe to us. We will keep with you during the off season
That's
and
right.
talk more about the sport that we love, and in our case we're married to.
That's right.
So thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.